This old Singer sewing machine is the sewing machine I learned to sew with. It's a Treadle machine. It was made in 1910. Drawer handles are not original. I changed those sometime in the last 10 years because the originals were no longer good. In the 1960s, 70s and 80s, when people were switching to electric, my mother bought up a lot of these sewing machines. Well, maybe only 8 or so. She had 8 girls and she wanted all of us to have these old sewing machines. And it's what I learned to sew with. I've been sewing with it for more than 50 years. And I have tried using the electric machines, but this is what I've learned with. I can sew better with it. I make my clothes with it. I make the quilted accents with it. The pot holders, the wall hangings, the pot holders with pockets, the oven mitts. Everything I sew with machine I sew with this machine. So I just finished a project and the thread is still on the machine and some of the other equipment. So I will now close the machine and show you how that is done. Let's take the thread off the machine and remove the bobbin. I believe at one time there would have been a little drawer here to put in to store the bobbin, but it was gone before I saw it. And now I'll take the belt off, lift up the head, lift up this, lower the head, then we close this lid. Now it's a piece of furniture. You can set a plant on here. You can use it for a desk or work area for work surface. My cats use it to sit on here here's the windowsill. So they use it to get in there. And in the daylight, this is opened up and I sew by daylight. Just set this right so that you will be able to see what I'm doing. I like to keep myself off the photos because this is about the sewing, not about me. But it's hard to focus to get only the work on it. Okay, tonight I want to sew one of these quarters. See, I've got it laid out there on the table, and now I want to show how I sew it. I've already put the bobbin in here with white thread. I'll close this. And put some thread on top. Here's the spool. Threading the needle is always a challenge for me because I've got low vision and I can hardly see the needle, but I always manage somehow. Okay, got it in. The reason I always get it in is because I don't quit before it's threaded. Okay, pull up the thread from the bobbin. It is very important to put right side against right, right to right, and to have the edges even. And then I push it under the foot and sew. An electric sewing machine would have marks would have a wider foot and would have marks on the foot and also in the metal to show exactly how deep to make the seam. I learned to sew on this 100-year-old machine that was made in 1910, and I prefer this one to electric because I'm used to it. I can sew better with it just because I'm used to it. I'll lay a few up here so you can see exactly how this works. So I'm sure you can see this is a 4-patch like this, like these here. 2 gray and 2 blue. Now I sew them together. I have to make sure that the edges are perfectly even if possible. Sometimes my cutting I didn't cut them perfect. So now we'll see what I have sewn this far. I open them up and flatten the seam. If I were really fussy, I would use a hot iron to flatten the seam. But mostly, I think I can do it good enough this way. See, that works nicely. Usually I iron the seams after everything is sewn together from the back side. Turn it upside down and sew them that way. No, that's not right. So what I will do now is sew together these 4 squares. If I seem to have an accent with my sewing and kind of weird terminology, I did not learn to sew in English, and it's kind of hard sometimes to think of the right way to say it in English. I'm from the Horse and Buggy Mennonite community, and our language is Pennsylvania German or Pennsylvania Dutch. So you see, the language was brought over from Europe a couple hundred years ago, and we just kept it. We use it for, well, I'm no longer with that community. If I were, I could not be making these videos because they don't allow photographs or computers, at least not the group I came from. So but anyway, when I speak with my family or with my nieces and nephews, this is the language we speak. When I speak to my cats, Pennsylvania German is the language I speak. That seems to be the language of the home. The very decent home language. It's for me, it's a comfortable home language. Kitty. Maisie, du sollst schon jetzt schon gehen. Okay. Okay. Good girl. So that's a tiny sample of the language. I told her to go. It means to go. You didn't realize you signed up for a language course, but I'm just talking while I'm sewing here. Trying to get the seams exactly on top of each other, and that can be a little bit tricky. Okay, that should be 4 squares.